My older brother betrayed me with my girlfriend when I was 17. My dad kicked him out forever. But 11 years later, he came back demanding his share of the inheritance, and my answer left everyone speechless. I'm 34 years old. I work as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. And honestly, I need to tell this story because a few weeks ago, my older brother contacted me for the first time in over a decade and basically asked me for money, and everything that happened between us came flooding back to my head like it was yesterday. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was 17 and everything went to hell in a single day. It was just the three of us at home. My dad, James, my brother Connor, who was 25, and me. My mom died when I was like 8 years old. I don't remember much about her, to be honest, but I do remember that after that, my dad never remarried or anything. He just dedicated himself to raising the two of us and working as a mechanic. Connor was much older than me. I mean, we were 8 years apart, so when I was a kid, he was practically an adult already. You know, going out with his friends, had his own life. But he still lived with us because he was saving money or something like that. My dad always told us that the most important thing in life was family and loyalty, like it was his mantra. He repeated that constantly, and I grew up believing in that completely. I thought family was everything, and that we were unbreakable. When I was 17, I was in my last year of high school. I ran on the track team, and I had a girlfriend named Samantha. We'd been together for like a year, and I was super in love. You know how it is at that age? I thought we were going to be together forever, and all that nonsense. She came over to the house a lot. She got along well with my dad, with Connor too, obviously, and everything seemed perfect. That day, it was a Tuesday, I think, or maybe Wednesday. I got out of track practice early because the coach got sick or something. I don't remember exactly. But the point is, I got home like 2 hours earlier than normal. Like 4 inches the afternoon instead of 6. When I walked into the house, everything was quiet. My dad was still at the shop working. I thought nobody was home. But then I heard noises coming from my room. And at first I thought maybe Connor was looking for something in there, or I don't know. But something felt weird. I went upstairs, and when I opened my bedroom door, I saw them there. Both of them, Connor and Samantha, together in my bed. And honestly, it was like my whole world stopped in that moment. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Like my brain just wouldn't accept it, and I just stood there in the doorway like an idiot for what seemed like forever, but was probably only a few seconds. Samantha screamed and covered herself with the sheets. Connor got up quickly and started saying, "Wait, Ethan, let me explain." But I couldn't even speak. I literally felt like I was going to throw up right there. I turned around and ran down the stairs, left the house, and walked around the neighborhood for like an hour, just walking and trying to understand what had just happened. You know what I mean? It was my brother. My older brother, who was supposed to look after me, who was supposed to be my role model, and he was with my girlfriend in my own bed in my own house. I don't know how to describe what I felt. It was a mix of disgust, betrayal, rage, all together. And I also felt stupid, because obviously this hadn't started that day. Who knows how long they'd been doing it behind my back. But when I finally came back home, it was already dark. My dad had just gotten home from work and was in the kitchen making dinner. Connor was in the living room watching TV like nothing had happened, and Samantha had obviously already left. My dad saw my face and asked me what was wrong, and I just exploded. I told him everything right there in front of Connor. The words came out of my mouth without control. I told him I'd come home early and found them together, that my own brother had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I watched my dad's face change. I'd never seen him like that. He went from confusion to a fury that was scary, and he turned to Connor and asked him if it was true. Like that, with a super calm voice, but that at the same time sounded dangerous. Connor tried to deny it at first, said I was exaggerating, that I'd misinterpreted what I saw, but I didn't let him. I yelled that I'd seen them with my own eyes, that it wasn't any misunderstanding, and finally Connor went quiet and looked down. My dad stared at him for a long moment, then walked toward him and said, "Go up to your room, pack your things. You have 1 hour to get out of this house, and I don't want to see you again." Connor tried to argue, said, "Dad, please let me explain. It was a mistake. It won't happen again." But my dad just repeated the same thing. "You have 1 hour. Get out of my house." I stayed there in the kitchen while Connor went upstairs. I could hear him opening and closing drawers, putting things in bags, and my dad stayed standing in the same spot without moving, with his fists clenched. After a while, Connor came down with 2 big suitcases and a backpack. He walked through the kitchen and looked at me, tried to say something to me, but I turned around. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear him. I heard the front door open and close, and just like that, Connor left our lives. The following weeks were horrible. Samantha tried to talk to me several times, sent me messages saying she was so sorry, that it had been a mistake, that she loved me, but I blocked her everywhere. Didn't want to know anything about her ever again. At school, the rumor spread about what had happened because obviously I'd told some friends, and it was super awkward, but somehow I got through it. Connor didn't try to contact us at all, not me or my dad. He just disappeared. We heard from some cousins that he'd moved to another city like 3 hours away, that he was working at a store or something, but that was it. Neither of us made any effort to communicate with him, and he didn't with us either. The years passed, and life went on. I graduated from high school, started college studying accounting, got a part-time job, and basically moved forward with my life. My dad and I became much closer after what happened. It was just the 2 of us against the world, and although we never talked directly about Connor, I knew my dad was as hurt as I was, maybe more. Because for him, Connor hadn't just betrayed me, but had broken the code of family loyalty that he'd instilled in us our whole lives. My dad aged fast after that. I don't know if it was from stress or just life, but by the time he was like 60, he already looked much older than he was. When I was 28 years old, I'd already finished college, was working full-time as an accountant, had my own small but decent apartment, and things were going well. I mean, I wasn't rich or anything, but I was stable. One day my dad called me and said he needed to talk to me, to come over for dinner at the house. And when I got there, I saw he looked bad, like gaunt and tired. I sat down to the table and he just blurted it out. He said, "Ethan, I have cancer. It's stage 4. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months, maybe a year if I'm lucky." I froze, didn't know what to say, and he kept talking. Told me he'd started treatments, but that he wasn't going to be cured, that it was just to give him a little more time, and that he needed me to know so we'd be prepared. The next few months were the hardest of my life. My dad deteriorated quickly. The chemo left him destroyed. He lost weight, lost his hair, but he never complained. Never said why me or this isn't fair. He just faced it with a dignity that still impresses me. I moved back into the house to take care of him, left my apartment, missed work when necessary, although my boss was understanding, and let me work from home when I could, and basically dedicated myself full-time to being with him. I cooked for him, even though he barely ate, took him to his medical appointments, stayed up with him at night when the pain was really bad, and we talked about everything, about life, about mom, about memories from when I was a kid, about everything, except Connor. Once, I think it was like 2 months before he died, he asked me if I'd heard anything from Connor, and I told him no, that I hadn't had contact with him in over a decade. My dad nodded and was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think I did the right thing, kicking him out of the house. What he did was unforgivable, but sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have given him a chance to fix it." I told him no, that he'd done exactly the right thing, that Connor had betrayed us and that actions have consequences, and my dad smiled sadly and said, "You're more like me than I thought." That was the only time we talked about Connor in all that time. In the end, my dad died at home, in his own bed, with me sitting beside him holding his hand. It was peaceful. He fell asleep and just didn't wake up, and even though I knew it was going to happen, even though I'd prepared myself mentally, when it finally happened, I felt completely destroyed. He'd been my rock, my only real family for so long, and suddenly I was alone in the world. The funeral was small. Some of my dad's friends from the shop, some neighbors, my Aunt Margaret, who was my dad's sister and who we had occasional contact with, but nothing big. I notified Connor, obviously, found his number through a cousin and sent him a message saying Dad had died when the funeral was, but he never responded and never showed up. At the moment it hurt. I thought, well, at least he could have come to say goodbye to his father, but I also wasn't surprised at all. A few weeks after the funeral, I met with my dad's lawyer for the will thing, and it turned out my dad had left me practically everything. The house, his savings, which weren't much but something, his truck, everything. To Connor, he left $1,000, literally $1,000 and nothing more, and there was a note in the will that said something like, "This is all the support you'll receive from me. I hope you've learned something about loyalty and family," which honestly made me cry when I read it because I could hear my dad's voice saying that. I thought that was the end of it, that I could start processing my grief and move forward, but turns out not. Like a month after the reading of the will, I got a message from an unknown number, and when I opened it, it was Connor. The message said something like, "Hey Ethan, I know it's been a long time. I heard about the will. I'd like for us to talk. Can we meet?" And I just stared at the message, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, block him and move on with my life. But another part was curious, wanted to know what the hell he wanted after all these years. I responded and agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop, a public place where I knew we couldn't make a scene. The day of the meeting, I arrived early. I was nervous, like you have no idea. I hadn't seen Connor in over 11 years, didn't even know what he looked like now. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, obviously, had some gray hair, had gained weight, and looked tired, like beaten down by life. He sat across from me and there was an awkward silence for a moment. Then he said, "Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you'd agree to see me." He started with the basics, asked me how I was, told me he was so sorry about Dad, that he'd wanted to go to the funeral but things were complicated, and I just let him talk without saying much. After beating around the bush for a few minutes, he finally got to the point. He said, "Look, Ethan, I know what happened between us was horrible. I know I hurt you and I hurt Dad, and I've had to live with that all these years. But we're brothers, we're family, and I think Dad would have wanted us to reconcile." I stayed quiet, waiting for him to say what he really wanted to say, and finally he let it out, said, I've been going through tough times financially. I got divorced 2 years ago. I have debts, and I was wondering if you'd consider sharing some of the inheritance with me. It doesn't have to be half or anything, but something to help me get back on my feet." I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could believe it, but at the same time I was incredulous that he had the nerve to ask me that. I said, "Seriously? You disappear for over a decade? Don't try to fix things when Dad was alive? Don't even go to his funeral? And now you show up asking for money?" Connor got defensive, said it wasn't just about the money, that he really wanted to reconnect with me, that he'd been thinking about us all this time, and I just exploded. I told him it was a lie, that if he really cared about family, he would have been there when Dad was dying, that I was the one who took care of him every day, who watched him deteriorate, who was with him until the end. And where was he? Connor tried to say something, but I didn't let in him. I told him that Dad left the will the way he left it for a reason, that he'd made that decision consciously, and that I was going to respect his wishes, that I wasn't going to give him a single cent. Connor got angry then. His face changed completely, and said that I'd always been the favorite, that Dad had never given him a chance to redeem himself, that I was being unfair, and I laughed, like a bitter laugh, and said, "Unfair? You want to talk about unfair? Was it fair, what you did to me when I was 17? Was it fair that you slept with my girlfriend in my own house?" Connor went quiet for a moment, then said, "That was over 10 years ago, Ethan. People change. People deserve second chances." I told him that maybe so, but that second chances are earned, not demanded, and that he'd never tried to earn one, that he only showed up when he found out there was money involved. The conversation got ugly after that. Connor told me I was just as stubborn and bitter as Dad, that we were both hypocrites who preached about family, but that really didn't know how to forgive, and I told him to leave, that I had nothing more to talk about with him. He got up from the table, threw down some coins for his coffee even though he hadn't taken a single sip, and left without looking back, and I stayed there, sitting, feeling a little bad but also sure that I'd done the right thing. My Aunt Margaret found out about the meeting. I don't know how. Probably, Connor called her, and she contacted me a few days later. She told me she understood I was angry, but that maybe I should consider giving Connor at least a little help. That at the end of the day, he was my brother. That life is short, and I didn't want to live with regrets. I explained the whole situation to her, told her it wasn't just about what happened years ago, but about the fact that Connor had never shown any real remorse, that he was never there for Dad when he needed him most, and that now he just wanted money. My aunt sighed and I said, "Well, you know what's best for you. I just don't want you to regret it later." But I knew I wasn't going to regret it, like I was completely sure of my decision. Like 2 weeks later, I got another message from Connor, this time asking if I could at least lend him some money, that he'd pay me back as soon as he could, that he really needed it. This time, I didn't even respond, just left the message on read and moved on with my life. I sold my dad's house a few months ago because it was too big for just me and had too many memories. Bought a smaller apartment closer to my work, and I've been using part of the inheritance money to finally do things I always wanted to do, like travel a bit, buy myself a decent car, things like that. Do I feel bad sometimes? I guess a little. Not for not giving Connor money because that decision was easy, but for the fact that I basically have no family now. Like I'm alone in the world. I don't have siblings, don't have parents, just me. But at the same time, I can't force myself to have a relationship with someone who betrayed me so deeply and who never really tried to make things right. My dad taught me that loyalty is the most important thing, and I'm going to honor that, even if it means being alone. Connor made his choices years ago, and I'm making mine now, and that's all there is to it, I guess.